Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're most welcome to this very interesting side event on this Food, Agriculture, and Water Day here at the Benelux Pavilion, where we are talking about water at the heart of climate action. I would like to begin with just some two very beautiful quotes for us to get into the mood of this very interesting side event. Let's remember what Odin said, that thousands have lived without love. Not one has lived without water. And Benjamin Franklin also stated, when the well is dry, we know the worth of water. So, to begin our session, I would like to invite uh, Mr. Stephen Collect, who is the Deputy Director General of International Cooperation Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, who are actually funding this Water at Heart program, to give us some welcome remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Delighted that you are all here. And let's also grant each other a lot of love apart from water. We are welcome in the Benelux European Investment Bank Pavilion, and thank you for joining us today at today's event, in which we will talk about an exciting new partnership, and we all have it on our badges here, Water at the Heart of Climate Action. We all know that climate change is amplifying all challenges connected with water. There's either too much water, too little, or too polluted. 9 out of 10 natural disasters during the last decade were water-related. 9 out of 10. Half of the world's population lives in highly vulnerable areas, vulnerable to climate change, that is. Early warning systems do not protect 1/3 against extreme weather and climate change, such as floods, droughts, heat waves, or storms. In Africa, it's even worse. 60% of people lack coverage. And so it's clear, we need to act with speed and with skill. That's why we're here at the COP, right? At COP27 last year in Egypt, the UN Secretary General unveiled an ambitious plan to achieve early warning systems for everyone on Earth by 2027, I'm sure you're all aware. And the Netherlands is a proud supporter of that Early Warnings for All initiative. And this Water at the Heart of Climate Action is a new and important step towards achieving this goal. Earlier this year, the Netherlands co-hosted the UN Water Conference, the first in nearly half a century. And that just shows how little attention globally we have been paying to water issues, despite the critical importance of water solutions in strengthening the resilience and reducing the exposure of billions of people worldwide. This is now changing, and hopefully the outcome of this COP will be a testimony to that. At the UN Water Summit, the Netherlands demonstrated its commitment to assisting vulnerable countries in building resilience to climate change by launching this Water at the Heart of Climate Action initiative aimed at mitigating the impacts of water-related risks and disasters in 4 countries: Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Uganda. It is an ambitious partnership between the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, the Netherlands Red Cross, the Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center, and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, and the Systemic Observations Financing Facility. Mouthful of very productive and useful partners in this exercise we cannot do without. More than 51.5 million people in the area of these 4 countries are expected to suffer high food insecurity due to climate extremes and conflict. Through a combination of early warning and early action measures, this partnership places the needs of local communities at the heart of water action, hence the name. But you all know that. Since March, since the Water Conference, the program has been initiated in Ethiopia, Uganda, and South Sudan. All three countries held inception workshops with high political buy-in. The systemic change needed to bring water at the heart of climate action requires the cooperation of mandated ministries for water disaster management, hydromet officers, and the Red Cross in their auxiliary role. National platforms with mandated ministries and stakeholders are being set up, and planning workshops are initiated. The high political buy-in in the countries to pursue this collaboration is a testimony to the systemic change that such a commitment can bring about. At today's event are present excellencies from Ethiopia, Uganda, South Sudan to share their stories of impact and challenges needed to achieve the goal to place water at the heart of climate action. Our initial commitment of 55 million euros is intended to lay out the structure and collaboration needed to place water at the heart and to initiate also the action. National plans will highlight gaps and challenges beyond this commitment, but they are crucial to capacitate mandated country agencies in reducing the vulnerability of communities to climate change. There's a need to join forces with other institutional, development and humanitarian donors to scale up this commitment to other countries and integrate this systemic change into governmental structures in the long term. A representative from the donor community, the World Bank, will be speaking to present the donor perspective today. So here we are, ready for takeoff in this important event. I very much look forward to this discussion with all of you, and please be vocal on this because we cannot do it ourselves, and would now like to give the floor to Nena, my dear friend and colleague from the International Federation of the Red Cross, to what the partnership means for you and how we are going to work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for this nice introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure for me, having been involved in this planning this program since day one, to witness its kind of launch and promotion here at the COP28. I also wanted to thank the Kingdom of the Netherlands for hosting us here in this pavilion. The IFRC network is incredibly pleased to be part of the Water at the Heart Climate Action Partnership. I will use the abbreviations now with UNDRR, SOFF, and WMO. This partnership is a major example of operationalization of the Secretary General of the UN Early Warnings for All initiative. This unique partnership seeks to help communities adapt to changing climate through early warning, early action, and integrated water resource management in an approach that we also call from satellites to sandbags. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a planetary emergency. The climate crisis is a humanitarian crisis, and humanitarian consequences are already being felt by billions of people around the world, in particular by the world's most vulnerable and marginalized communities. Now, it is more than ever urgent to recognize that climate change is primarily a water crisis. Extreme weather events are making water more scarce, more unpredictable, more polluted. These impacts throughout the water cycle threaten sustainable development, biodiversity, and people's access to water and sanitation. Hence, the need for climate policy makers to put water at the heart of climate action plans, and this is the name of our joint program. Despite commitments made under the UNFCCC, climate impacts continue to increase year after year. The situation is more acute in the Horn of Africa, where severe droughts and floods have resulted in displacements of more than 2 million people and resulted in economic losses. And yet, studies show that in the last 2 decades, the deadliest and costliest disasters were forecasted. We are grateful that scientists' progress over recent decades means that we can make increasingly precise predictions about when and where hurricanes, drought, floods, and other climate and weather-related shocks are likely to occur, and what their likely impact on people will be. We know that scientific forecasts and early warnings are critical, but they must be translated into early and long-term local action. Too often, warning messages are not timely, not understood by local actors, are not actionable, or they are not sufficiently targeted and inclusive. This is where our new partnership, Water at the Heart of Climate Action, comes in. Together with WMO, SOFF, and UNDRR, the IFRC network will improve the ability of communities to act upon early warning messages by co-designing these messages to be tailored to those communities and their specific needs. Working through our network of national societies, we will integrate anticipatory action with longer-term actions aimed at improving the climate resilience of communities and contributing to locally led climate adaptation. We all need to be audacious in our ambition to tackle this climate emergency, and the onus is now on us to scale up our investment and action. While this particular partnership focuses on 4 African countries, as Stephen mentioned, Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, it is part of a much larger ambition to scale up locally led adaptation, including early warning and early action through IFRC's Global Climate Resilience Platform, which will target 100 most vulnerable countries to climate over the period of 5 years. It also puts in action our collective commitments under the Early Warnings for All initiative that I already mentioned, where IFRC is leading Pillar 4 on preparedness to respond. So this initiative has therefore been designed in such a way so that it can be easily replicated across many more countries and scaled for transformational global impact. We have reached a make or break moment in our fight against climate change. Early warnings, early action, and locally led adaptation represent a core tool in our arsenal. Let's make the coming year a year when we will walk the talk. I'm confident that today's discussion will inspire us for collective action, breaking out from the confines of non-conventional institutional and sectoral silos to ensure fundamental transformational change. With that, I would like to pass it over to Shaban to take us forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Nena, for those beautiful and wonderful remarks, and also thanks to Stephen, who has just left. For now, before we go into the next segment of this beautiful conversation, I would like you to turn to your neighbor after hearing from both Stephen and Nena about this water at heart, to take just a few minutes to discuss. When you hear about water at heart and also what you have heard, what comes to your mind? And then I'll tell you what will happen next. So just turn to your neighbor, self-organized. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, clap once. Only once. Once is only once. Pa. If you can hear me, clap once. Thank you very much. We cannot stop this beautiful conversation. I'm sure even if I gave you 1 hour, you would go on and on and on. I will give you just 1 minute to share with me if there is any that really found something very inspiring for the start before we go into the next segment. Yes.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Joseph Danje. I'm from Cameroon, and we have our own practical action in the field. We are organizing the caravan for the fight against climate change in our country. But if I came here, was interested with your subject, it's because I wanted to share a small story with you. Since in my other life, I'm also a producer for TV especially, and I work for National Geographic from time to time. And I want to call your attention to, please, when you are coming up with your project, try to make it, try to contextualize your the way you conceive the project. Try to conceptualize it, because I'm used to work in remote areas, and I went somewhere not far from Sudan. And I saw that they did a project of water there, and they installed the pipe that produced water in the middle of the village. We spent about 4 nights in that village. And I was wondering myself, why do women do not go there to take water? They prefer to go back to the stream far. And I wanted to understand really what is happening. I then understand that those who came to implement the project in the village, they did not take into consideration that the fact that women are not allowed to come in public and start pumping water. So please, that's my small contribution. When you are drawing your project, try to conceptualize it and try to include cultural beliefs of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that wonderful advice. Today morning, we were looking at the text on the global goal on adaptation, and actually emphasizes also the draft text about the need for integrating indigenous knowledge. So this is really great. So anyway, let's now invite Ms. Sarim Malik, who is the Vice Chair at Sanitation for Water for All, and also Coordinator and Executive Director of the African Civil Society Network on Water and Sanitation, to give us a testimony on the current situation with a view of civil societies. Madam, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, what has been great about these last 8 days that I've been here is that we've heard such rich contributions that you have this buffet, and now towards the end you find yourself picking some items, putting on the plate and serving it up. I've just come out of a meeting with Micah where she said that water is not a sector, it is actually the engine of climate change action. We've just heard on water being, climate change being a risk amplifier. We continue that by saying that water is a resilience multiplier. We touched on the issue of the commitments that had been made at the UN conference. The majority came from civil society and non-state actors, the bulk of it. And then we touched also on the issue of gender, which is something that we really, really need to try and figure out. Now, I'm going to talk about Elise Wan. Elise Wan, a lady from Mali, she lives somewhere in the Sahel behind the Timbuktu Mosque, if I'm not mistaken. And I called her and I told her, I'm coming here, Ellie, particularly for this session. What do you want me to say? And it was a cry for help, yet again, that not enough was being done. The water points have dried up even worse than what it was 2 years ago. The usual, they have to walk further. The crops are dying. Their children are dying. The cattle is dying. It's quite a disaster. I will come back to the issue of, we talked about, yes, health, education, agriculture. But do not forget the issue of political stability. Honorable Karl Schlettwein, the Minister for Water and outgoing President of AMCAO, zeroed in on the fact that climate change and political instability were heavily linked. And for you that are in the humanitarian sector, I suppose your first order of business is actually in terms of conflict, political instability, and the wash and climate change impacts. In terms of the work that we do, we've heard from my brother over here from Cameroon talk about the contextualization, which is true. There's a checklist. There's a checklist. What you're told at the top in Africa is not the same thing as what you're going to be told at the bottom. It's not. Doesn't mean because La Primature gave a go-ahead on something that the chief on the ground is actually going to agree to it. The cultural disparities, the nuances, there's so much. I do not have to tell you about this. I do think we should congratulate ourselves for having water come right up in the GGA. But the question that is being asked is in terms of how is that going to be operationalized? That's a question that has been coming up. We raised the issue of water governance, an area that must be addressed. I said, the water crisis is a governance crisis. Karine Borges said, the climate crisis is a water crisis, the water crisis is a governance crisis. If we do not sort out, again, the disease and the infection that we see within the water sector, it will seep into the climate change sector. Because after all, which systems are going to be used to operationalize that water, the climate change action? Especially if we are pushing the agenda of water governance. And water governance doesn't only touch on systems and processes and policies and institutions and regulations. Those, of course, are the basics. But also in terms of the stability of a country, the resilience of a community. When it comes to the issue of gender, Karine asked me what I thought about gender. I told her, let's be frank, it's not a priority. We can have all this hoo-ha around gender, but when it comes to the final documents and the final outcomes, it barely makes a blip. True or not true? However, not all is lost. The Dutch recently organized a conference, which I had the honor of attending, on the feminist approach in development aid. And I thought, well, that's pretty clever in terms of going really granularly, because gender has become almost like an AOB or generic, you just put gender in terms of a ticker box. But the feminist approach I felt was really critical in terms of how we look at your programs. Especially in the humanitarian sector, I can imagine that women are worse hit. Second is the human rights-based approach. You must put people at the center. Now, while I do also work with the private sector, we also see the private sector, getting a lot of attention, sometimes at the expense of people. Now, we're looking at the issue of loss and damage, at the expense, maybe, of adaptation. So these are some of the policy trade-offs that we actually have to work on. And as civil society organizations, follow up. You need to come out of your comfort zone. It can't be just everything is linked. Water connects pretty much everything. Well, I have an example on the rematriarchation of water. Isn't that a beautiful word? The rematriarchation of water. I heard it from the Southeast Pacific constituencies. I heard it again amongst the indigenous people, where water management has been given back to women. Now let's travel all the way to West Africa in Senegal, where women were the ones who led on building wash-resilient systems, not with big tech. This was mud and bricks and indigenous knowledge. Nothing expensive, but they managed to put these ramparts around. That is something I think we should consider. Building the capacity. After all, they are the ones that are the most affected. They are the ones whose capacity has to be built. Now, I'm not those that say that women can do it all. No, there's a collaboration as well with our fellow men, after all. And we must be cognizant of that. After all, we see in Kenya who is digging the pit for the woman. It is the man. It's not her that is going to dig that pit. Those pits are getting deeper and deeper. She's not the one with a baby on her back that is going to go down. It is the men. So as civil society, yes, we have a ton of examples, particularly from the water sector. We are firm believers now that the declaration has been made that water is the engine of climate change action. We will bring this expertise. The water sector, like I said, has been here before this. We have tools, instruments, and ways of making waves, bringing everybody on board, hydrating all your initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Sarim, for those very wonderful remarks and also giving us a picture on the thinking of civil society and reiterating the commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the panel that is going to also share with us different perspectives. With us here, we have Mr. Fetene Teshome-Tola, who is the Director General at the Ethiopia Met Institute, and also the permanent representative of Ethiopia to the World Meteorological Organization, but also the president of WMO RAI Africa. You're most welcome. We also have Mr. Joshua Banak, who is the Director General of Disaster Management in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management of South Sudan. Most welcome, Mr. Banak. I'll skip Madam Yogita from the bank. I will introduce her a bit later because she will be coming after the three panelists. And I'll go to my fellow countryman, Mr. Robert Kwesiga, who is the Secretary General of Uganda Red Cross Society. You're most welcome. So I'll start with you, Mr. Kwesiga, as Secretary General. Could you please share with the participants here how Water at Heart is different from other programs and how it can ensure that communities are at its center as a call that we have been hearing here?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, friends and colleagues. Let me start by thanking the Kingdom of Netherlands for extending funding to this very interesting program, but also to all the implementing partners involved in this program, but you all who have come to join us this morning. Just allow me, in a summary form, to give a bit of the statistics we are looking at, and specifically to Africa and the region which is being talked about, which is the Nile Basin region. And in a way, I'm representing the Red Cross national societies of South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda, to put it in that context. So when we talk of extreme weather, that is water-related, you are moving from floods, to storms, to droughts, and of course, all this is about water. If you look at the global statistics, we are looking at around 2.1 billion people who still wake up without access to clean water. And this is at the global level. And meaning these people can't access safe water for drinking, for cooking, for bathing, for even the animal husband, those who are into the animal industry. When we look at the question of Africa, we are looking at about 230 million Africans who are already facing water scarcity, and over 460 million who are living in water-stressed areas. And when I bring it to East Africa, we are looking at 51.1 million people, because of water scarcity, who are already facing food insecurity. And this food insecurity, we are talking of the greater horn of Africa, extending from Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, and part of the Sudan, and to an extent Uganda. At the center of this, there is a whole question of the communities. So we can talk of the global dimensions, we can talk of the national dimensions, of how all of us, the actors, are supporting this. But when you bring it down to where it happens, at the community level, this is where the high vulnerabilities are, where the communities are hard hit, and where inequalities and the vulnerabilities are growing. And so this program tries to put these communities at the center. Just to give an example, in Uganda, South Sudan, and Ethiopia, where this project is going to be implemented or is already being implemented, we share the Nile, what we call the Nile Basin, and already the ecosystem of the Nile Basin is already under threat because of encroachment and also the non-sustainable management mechanism of the Nile Basin. So the Nile, here Egypt is not included, but you are talking of all these countries that are in the basin, but its encroachment, the encroachment and sustainable way of managing the Nile Basin and the Nile River is under threat. And so we face the extremes. Either it is too much water, like this year when we have El Nino, but also too little water, severe droughts, and it talks of the food scarcity I've talked about. Bring it back to you, zeroing it on Uganda, where these extremes are happening. So all our mountain areas, in the east, the Elgon, in the west, Rwenzori, Muhabura, name it, floods, landslides are an annual occurrence now. If you talk of the areas that surround the Nile Basin, when it rains, you're talking of Kampala up to the time the river enters South Sudan, we are talking of flooding and destruction of livelihoods every year. If you talk of the northeast, which is Karamoja area, we are talking of water scarcity, and of course, which destroys livelihoods, and of course, the food scarcity associated with that. The impact all this has on infrastructure, on our livelihoods, goes without saying, and we can give you the figures. Now, as the population grows, because we are having high population growth in Uganda in particular, now these extreme weather conditions also have a direct impact on health. And that's why we talk of the prevalence of malaria, which is even going up. It had already gone down, but is almost going up. We talk of epidemics, which are water-related, whether you talk of cholera and the rest of it, but also we are talking of pandemics because of the pressure we are putting on the natural environment and the habitats, and in the process, the viruses or the vector-borne diseases are shooting up. Ebola, Marburg, you can go on and on. Now, allow me, dear moderator, to mention that we are not only looking at water in that kind of extreme situations that it causes in terms of negativity, but too much water is also good for fighting poverty in terms of food production, in terms of economic opportunities it creates for the people affected. And so the question is, where do we take advantage of too much water, but also how do we mitigate when there is either water scarcity or too much water? As Uganda Red Cross, or as the Red Cross, whether in Sudan or South Sudan or Ethiopia, we are central at working with the communities, where we work with the communities to anticipate, prevent, manage, and respond to water-related emergencies and disasters. And this is enshrined in our auxiliary roles with government, because as you know, Red Cross, the difference with civil society, what my colleague has talked about, we are part and parcel of government, where we play auxiliary roles, but independent of government, very interesting arrangement. And in all this, we work to supplement government efforts in all these areas, especially as first responders, but also in mitigation and adaptation. So, what are we doing that we are going to scale up and with the support of this funding? Already, climate change adaptation is integrated together with early warning and early action. So all that we do, we are integrating climate change adaptation, early warning, and early action interventions. And these are projects we are implementing in all these areas which we have mentioned, but also which can be upscaled with more funding where possible. We work with the district disaster committees. We work with the district disaster committees as an auxiliary institution in strengthening the government capacities at that local level, the last mile where the government presence is, such that these districts can be able to profile their district disaster management situations, but also the mechanism for adaptation, for response, and for disaster management. Members, as you may know, the Red Cross is what it is because of its membership, because of its volunteers. And so, alongside working with government local structures, we deliberately make an effort to ensure that our community structures, which we call branches in some cases, our volunteers, our members, are given the right tools such that they can be at the center of working with the communities in mitigation, but also in response. Excuse me. When we talk of multi-hazard preparedness, this is the entry point. So water becomes central, but we are looking at the multi-hazard preparedness and building response systems. I'll just give an example. Our community volunteers are responding to promoting hygiene and access clean and safe water, rehabilitating and constructing water systems, protecting water sources, and also we have brought on board the solarization of these water sources we are involved in, but also setting up of community radios that can help transmit information to the community members at that kind of level. And through our network, whether with IFRC and the other Red Cross partners like the Netherlands Red Cross, this is what we are doing. In other words, or more so, we are heavily involved in communities to design interventions using their community knowledge. Because they are not a blank space. So they know what works and what doesn't work, if you draw from what our friend from Cameroon said. And so the community involvement, the community participation, the community actions that build on what they know is at the center of all that we do. In perspective, and I come to the conclusion, in my experience, and also science has proved this, the local approach to climate action provides both timely response and long-term solutions. And adaptation can be accomplished through disaster reduction and sustainable development. And so this project puts this at the center, that we can combine all this by looking at how we are using the local approach for these climate actions. This partnership of the Water at the Heart covers several countries, like has been mentioned, and we need to work out mechanisms for drawing synergies and learning from one another, such that we can manage the regional benefits of this initiative. Like I've said, if you are not doing climate adaptation in Uganda, in Ethiopia, or in Sudan as well, if you are busy destroying the environment in any of those countries, automatically the future of the Nile Basin is at risk, and of course River Nile would be a big issue of concern. And so the cross-border, the regional approach to managing the river basin or the Nile Basin or the River Nile must be put at the center of this initiative. We are lucky we have partners in this initiative who are going to help in producing and giving science information and technology, using science for monitoring the weather forecast, but also other water-related hazards. And so the various actors being mentioned feed into this community initiative such that we take appropriate decisions, we engage communities, we mitigate, we adapt, we respond when we have the right information that gives us the base upon which we can take decisions. And I find it very interesting that this initiative captures that. I'm seated to my neighbor from the World Bank, and during the small break, that's what we talked about, which is my last point, that this project or this program gives the seed funds for the bigger initiative. And so mobilizing resources, funding, scale up, do more, do better, is another rallying call we are making if we are to maximize the benefits of the project or the program we want to achieve, such that the Water at the Heart, covering these 4 countries and beyond, we can maximize the impact. And in conclusion, I must say, in Uganda, all the stakeholders have already mapped out a coordination mechanism, and the president, the head of state, has already appointed the minister to take the lead in coordination, and that is the Minister of Environment and Water. We have the Commissioner for Water is here with us, representing the minister. Excuse me. And so in Uganda we are ready, and as Uganda Red Cross, we are ready to move forward and make this change that we look forward to. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwesiga, for those wonderful remarks and connecting water with food and other challenges, but also trying to show us how to harness opportunities. I'm sure participants like Dr. Martin Van Alast, who is my former boss at the Climate Center and now with the Dutch Met Institute, is happy to hear this. So let me go to Mr. Teshone. Hearing the Secretary General, I mean, there are a lot of hopes to especially climate information providers. So coming from the Ethiopia Met Institute, how can a Hydromet office benefit from such such a move that Water at Heart is trying to move? And what are your hopes for this collaboration? And probably highlight some of the challenges that you are facing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank all of you for attending this session and for this opportunity. From Ethiopian perspective, as you know very well, I would like to say a few words about climate change. Weather and the climate-related hazards has a significant impact in the Greater Horn of Africa, particularly when we take the south and the southeast of Ethiopia. Somalia and Kenya has experienced it for the last 5 seasons consecutively the drought impact. So this drought impact it is own negative impact on pastoralist community with the scarcity of water availability, not only water availability, but also not only the surface water, but also the scarcity of groundwater and so on. So climate change directly impacted the water sector, and most of the communities at a grassroots level are affected with this weather and the climate-related hazards. So from this point of view, I think there is intervention should have to be taken to overcome these problems. For instance, the WMO currently with WMO, UNDRR, and IFRC and ITU in collaboration are declared the initiation of early warning for all initiative. So one of the early warning component is strengthening the observation network. So from this point of view, all decision makers, all development partners have their own role to overcome weather and the climate-related hazards. Therefore, the early warning for all initiative is highly appreciated, and the main sector affected by climate is one of the main sector is water sector. So everybody, as I mentioned earlier, drought and the flood, the two extremes is happening in the Greater Horn of Africa, including when you go to the southern part of Ethiopia, southern part of Africa, including Mozambique, Zambia. Tropical cyclone is frequently happening, and the flood impact displaced many peoples and affected life and property of communities. Therefore, proper management of water sector is very important to overcome the issues related to weather and the climate hazards. In addition to this project is very important. I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Netherlands for this initiation. And this project is highly affected, and it is benefited for the beneficiary countries among Ethiopia, Uganda, South Sudan, and Sudan. As you know very well, this region is highly affected by in one other, sometimes in drought, and the other time in flood extremes. So El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole affected the weather and the water related hazards in this area. To overcome this problem, I think coordination is, it is better to take a few points into consideration. One is coordination. Coordination among decision makers, development partners, and all communities at a grassroots level is very important. From this point of view, the coordination among UN agencies, UNDRR, IFRC,
and ITU is WMO is very important. This is very helpful to overcome this problem at a grassroots level. This one thing. Another issue is synergy among climate data producers and the user community. So decision makers, so that we can advise a decision makers to take timely and accurate decision to overcome these issues. From Ethiopian perspective, Deputy Prime Minister, the National Disaster Risk Management Committee, which is led by Deputy Prime Minister, is working on this issue to reduce flood vulnerability in the drought effects. We cannot avoid climate related, but it is possible to by making this intervention, it is possible to reduce the risk of vulnerability. Another point is, I think technology and innovation is very important. Technology, when we say about technology and innovation, it is very important to take into consideration to provide observation, meteorological observation is very important, to build forecast capability, and the climate prediction capability is very important. To do that, I think the Systematic Observation Facility Financing Fund, SOFF, is also playing a significant role to overcome these issues and to minimize these problems. So to manage the multi-hazard early warning issues and coherent and cooperative approach is very important so that the different development partnership, public-private engagement, all these things has played a positive impact to reduce weather, water, and climate-related hazards. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teshome, for those very wonderful remarks. I think I will, in order to save time, I will just move direct to Mr. Joshua Banak from South Sudan. Of course, listening from the previous panelists, it all goes back to you. Whether there is too much water, it comes to how people are really affected and require your services as a disaster manager. When there is too less water, still as a disaster manager, you will be coming in. So please, what from a disaster management perspective then, and your role, what do you hope to benefit from this water at heart partnership?
Well, thank you very much. Before I enter to my statement, let me acknowledge the presence of my brother and my boss, Peter Mahal, the PS, the permanent PS for the Minister of Water Resources. Can you stand so that everyone see you? This. Yeah. So to begin, dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, first, let me thank the organizers of this side events for choosing South Sudan to be part of this meaningful conversation. I also want to thank the people and the Kingdom of the Netherlands for selecting South Sudan to benefit from the water at the heart of climate action. You are welcome. You said earlier you want to come to South Sudan, so you are welcome to South Sudan. Today, the world faces many challenges due to the increased frequency of climate shocks, including floods, droughts, epidemics, cyclones, and tsunamis. As a result, many people are pushed further into abject poverty, especially in Africa. For the last 4 years, the IGAD region has experienced unprecedented wave of droughts in some parts of the region, and also floods in other parts of the region. The share of South Sudan in this climate change revolution is that almost 1 million people are either displaced or their livelihood destroyed every year. women, children, and people living with special needs bore the brunt of these shocks. Now, the water at heart of climate action program, it is a welcome news for the vulnerable people of South Sudan, although early warning has been and is still a priority of our region, or regional organizations, like the African Union, IGAD, the UNDRR, and the Cruise project. There remains a huge gap for South Sudan to fully benefit from the regional and global initiative aimed at strengthening early warning system. These challenges include, one, a lot of our humanitarian development organizations are working in silos inside the country. There is a lot of data, a lot of initiative, a lot of work being done, but yet still, the country at the national level, at the local level, does not see the benefit. They do not necessarily coordinate their intervention with the government from the onset. And if they do it with the wrong institutions, confusing rather than addressing the real problem. Also, as we develop our institutions, there is need to be more clarity in the roles and responsibilities of government institutions, which could be more apparent to our humanitarian development, mainly regarding which organization they should deal with in a particular area or discipline. 3, inadequate coordination among the stakeholders in the country, e.g., DRM and climate action practices. 75% of the population in South Sudan is vulnerable to flooding, but access issues become the main hurdle when attempting to support these people due to poor road infrastructure. So when the water at heart of the climate action comes to South Sudan, these are things that to put in mind. Access has been a big issue. The lack of national hazard maps, data about exposure to specific hazards, vulnerability analysis, and data collection and dissemination constitute a significant bottleneck in advancing early warning system in the country. A high level of literacy, especially among women, causes painful situation because women are the nucleus of the family. When there is a disaster, they are the first to be hit with children and disabled people. And of course, there will be undoubtedly remind us of inequalities in gender participation in all these projects. If you have inequality, you have a lack of education, and all of us, we are saying gender responsive disaster, if women are illiterate, so where do you come to put them in the front? Despite this grim picture, there is yet a glimpse of hope. An excellent opportunity lie ahead in South Sudan. What are these opportunities? One, the water at heart of the climate action and the early warning initiative for all came at the right time when South Sudan was transitioning or is transitioning from war to peace. So the peace dividends, the peace opportunity will allow this project to thrive in the country. The implementation of the revitalized agreement for the resolution of conflict in South Sudan is an excellent opportunity for vulnerable communities to benefit from these programs. At the international level, we have advanced and cemented our bilateral collaborations with the World Bank through the Enhancing Community Resilience Project, known as ECR2, and the African Development Bank through the provision of disaster risk insurance services implemented by the African Risk Capacity. Another opportunity is that we have established a strong relationships with our regional partners like AUC, African Union Commission, IGAD, UNDRR, and International Federation of the Red Cross. At home, we are in a strong position than before with South Sudan Red Cross, FAO, World Food Programme, World Vision, and ACT Alliance, and the rest. My brother from Uganda was saying when they have floods, they have actions, but when their dam become full, and then they want to open few water to say that they avoid flooding, it comes to us. And we always point finger to Uganda. So the issue of coordination is become a real issue among all the stakeholders. As I conclude, let me say this. While we appreciate all this initiative, there is just a big concern that unless we work together, I think all the speakers talk of working together as a team to achieve what these projects' goals are. So we need to understand the country's context. My brother from Cameroon, thank you very much, and culture to create a conducive environment for everyone. We need to divorce working independently and understand the local context before taking action in our capitals. Let's coordinate well and bring in all stakeholders from different range of perspective, and let us work together as a family. I think all these words have been echoed in all this, but it's very difficult now when we come to the ground to implement this. Finally, we need to address the issue of women's empowerment and see how best we can make them benefit from these programs. Fetching water, even when they're flooding, that one carrying children, women, we are moving around somewhere, and then when we come home, we ask them where is food, right? So they need to be empowered. Huh? And then, lastly, dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, climate change has formed a vital union with floods, droughts, epidemics, earthquakes, and tsunamis. The climate change, they are coordinating with this, it is coordinating with these guys. Unless we do the same, we are already defeated. Thank you for your time and cooperation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Banak, for those very wonderful remarks, and also highlighting that there is a silver lining at the end of the tunnel, that we are also seeing some light. I think before we move to Madame Yogita to share some advice on how we can sustain such partnerships, let me open up to the floor to hear if there's some reflections so far coming up. Please, because of time, I can see we're left with just 20 minutes. I would like to say that please stick to about 30 seconds. And we will have people from both the panelists, but also my colleagues like Daniela and Loretta from UNDRR and WMO. They are also here. They are part of this partnership. They're steering it at the global level, so they can also provide some response. And Stefania, if you can assist me with moving the microphone. Yes. So, Madam over there will take the first floor, and then we'll come to you. 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. Thanks for today's session, and thanks for the insightful sharing. Hello, everyone. I'm Yang from China, and I'm also the youth delegate representing Asia Pacific youth in the IFRC delegation. And I also want to take this chance to share with you that when it comes to the water issues, and there are millions of youth volunteers in Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement that take actions to raise the awareness of public for the importance of clean water, and also like water help to against the heat wave. And our youth volunteers, they take the youth lead and also local lead actions within their communities to do the social campaign and also many kinds of volunteer works. So I would like to call on your attention on our youth, and as it's a great it takes important role in the volunteer work and humanitarian actions against the climate change. And I believe that we can work together to do it better, do it more, and reach it further. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I sincerely apologize to coming back again. I'm on action in the field, so I'm not a politician, I'm not from the government, so I leave it in my daily work, on a daily basis. The first thing I want to say is meteorological data have never been important as this moment. I will tell you the truth. And I heard the cry of my brother from Ethiopia. I went there to do a scientific documentary on this insect, devastating insect. So, and I realized that many data are collected by the people of the Meteorological Society Institute, but it do not reach at the grassroots level at the right time to inform people what to do and how to go about it. They just go on national television, they put data, and that's all. No. Go down, please, go at the grassroots level, talk to the community like this. There must be a relay between you and the people, then they will understand and believe. Because, just to tell you the truth, for most people in the grassroots in Africa, people still believe that climate change is something from God. It's not something that it will happen. If we pray, that will change. No. So, please, put more emphasis on this information of giving data very early at the grassroots level, not only by using official media, by talking to community leaders.
Thank you.
Second is to the people of the Red Cross. People of the Red Cross, I always keep on asking myself, why do they always come after disaster? Please, work on prevention. Prevention is better than cure, people of the Red Cross, from you, madam. So you start, you prevent people. You go to the meteorological people who produce data. You collect it and help them to let it go at the grassroots level. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, we have Madam here, and then I will also request I'll put Dr. Ahmad on the spot because there is some cross-border planning that has come up, so to offer some insights. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I'm Anam. I'm from the German Red Cross in Pakistan. We have a lot of very similar issues that we're facing here. We also have issues with meteorological data in Pakistan. We are also implementing with the Pakistan Red Crescent Society a project on locally led adaptation, anticipatory action, and climate change policy. My question, maybe the panelists can talk about this at some point. When you're talking about water and climate action, how do you bridge the gap between infrastructural adaptation projects? So for example, the infrastructural aspects are very important because water is also a source of energy. Water is needed for agriculture, water is needed for productive use. But then you also have water needs for community use, for their daily use, for drinking, etc. And then you also have the policy aspect. So what are your recommendations for bridging that gap? And then secondly, as someone who has an activist background, what about the environmental and the private sector related aspects? In Pakistan, we face a huge problem in terms of environmental degradation and pollution as far as the plastic packaging of water is concerned. And that is something, when you talk about clean drinking water, there's a lot of plastic associated with that. So I'm just interested in knowing from your 4 countries' perspective, what is this? How are you tackling this? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ahmed? Yes, Dr.
Okay, the moderator, I think, gave me the floor. Colleagues, thank you very much. I'm Ahmed. I'm a regional program manager with ICPAC in the East Africa region. First of all, I think thank you very much for the donor, for the generous, actually, support to our member states. 4 of them are our eager member states. We closely work with the countries. Definitely, we'll have a role also in supporting implementing partners to build on the gains in the region, particularly with UNDRR. We have already a plan under Water at Heart, but also we encourage all partners to build on almost 30 years of experiences in the region from our climate center, because it's only then that we build agency, not just a 3 years project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'll turn back to the panelists, but because of time, I think let me first offer the floor back to Madam Yogita Momsen, who is the practice manager for water at the World Bank, to offer some insights on how to sustain such partnerships and how can we also bring them up to scale. So, Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us to this important and interesting session. And my comments are going to be slightly different in the sense of I'm going to step back a little bit from specific disaster risk issues and somewhat address the question that you raised, colleague from Pakistan, and also in sort of the continuity of the discussion from what our colleague in South Sudan brought up. You made some points which I think will be reflected in my comments. So the question you've asked me is about scaling up and sustaining. And I think what this session has raised clearly is how we need to respond differently to the issues of the water sector and the issue of water security. So we've made it clear that water is at the heart of climate, and climate is at the heart of water. And a lot of interesting and good examples have been given about addressing emergencies and emergency response. And we see, I'll give some data, that we're seeing that in order to meet water security needs, it's been estimated that we need $6.7 trillion by 2030, or $22.6 trillion by 2050, to meet global water security needs. These are huge numbers. And the bank has been looking at how to scale up finance for water. And we have a few pillars. And I think these pillars are relevant for everything we've discussed today. Because ultimately, even if we're not talking about emergency response, we're talking about resilience to investments. So when we make our investments more resilient, when climatic events happen, they're able to, by definition, withstand the events better. And when the emergency response steps in, the demands may not be as great because the communities are more resilient. And there are many aspects of that resilient response, as many of our colleagues here talked about. It could be resilient investments, it could be discussing with the communities, ensuring that women are involved in the discussions, that we contextualize. So what we think are the pillars to ensure that all of our dollars, I've used that as the currency in the discussion, all of our dollars go farther, all of our efforts go farther. And what does it take? Because it's partly about bringing in new money, but it's also about using the resources we have better, because we have limitations. And a lot of these topics, issues were discussed by various people and by your questions. So first of all, we need to get the enabling environment correct. And that means different things in different places. But basically, it means in the context, ensuring we have the right policies in place, the right institutions in place to support investments and response at all stages, at the emergency stage, at the other end of the development spectrum, at the whole range of the humanitarian development spectrum. We need to have the enabling environment in place. So that's one key pillar of what we think at the World Bank Group, and in many of our discussions with many of you partners agree that that's a key first step. Another important element for bringing in finance or making your financial resources go further is to work on specific inefficiencies that are in the sector already, whether you're an irrigator, and this is about food security, or whether you're about water supply and sanitation. And you mentioned resilience. For resilience in South Sudan, you need access. So working on the operational efficiencies or inefficiencies of our service providers is good economics and good for climate. For example, non-revenue water issues, for example, that's also mitigation, right? Then mobilizing the private sector when it makes sense for private sector expertise and innovation. We're seeing this across the board in the sector, whether you're talking about performance-based contracts in water supply and sanitation, when you're talking about farmer-led irrigation for water and agriculture, bringing in innovation because we need new solutions. We need different solutions now because we're in a completely different world. And solutions ultimately can help bring down costs. Maybe not always initially, as we saw with solar panels, but eventually can bring down costs and, importantly, help us address the climate crisis. And then third is actually bring in different financial instruments. And I didn't go directly to that question, that part first, because that's really embedded in so much more. So the financial instruments are varied. I mean, it depends on the level of financial sophistication of the particular market. But what's critical is that needs to be de-risked. The private sector is going to be costly if they sense the risks are high. That's the way to put it most simply. So the World Bank Group and others are thinking through and need to think through more de-risking mechanisms, and so that the private sector is able to come in and support these initiatives at an affordable level. And then we're here at COP, and we're hearing a lot about climate finance. So we need to mobilize climate finance. For example, the Global Environment Facility, Green Climate Fund. There are many different sources of climate finance out there. We need to support our clients, prepare, think through their programs and projects which can tap these sources better, and then provide, ultimately, that also includes data. I think several colleagues talked about data issues, so that we can ensure that our clients can tap more than once these resources. The World Bank itself has highlighted that water is an absolute key priority. Our senior management at the highest levels, and with the support of our board, we're going to the board soon, but we've already had some initial signals. Water has been, actually, to be more specific, fast-tracking water security and climate adaptation and mitigation. That's the name of the Global Challenge Program. The bank has put this forward as one of the top 6 priorities for the World Bank Group over the next few years. So that's fast-tracking water security and climate mitigation and adaptation. And what's interesting is the water sector global challenge is one of the main ones, or I'm not going to say only one because these things change, one of the main ones where it's clearly putting climate adaptation and mitigation at the forefront. And we'll see how this evolves, but this is about bringing new ideas, new partnerships, leveraging new resources ultimately into this space. Last week, 10 multilateral development banks announced a commitment to scale up their financing for climate resilient water. And so there we'll be looking at water supply and sanitation, water for agriculture, water security. And again, these are, as your question reflected, these are about resilient investments. These are about investments that are more prepared to withstand the events. So I think the Cameroon colleague, somebody mentioned prevention. So this is a lot of this is about prevention. Everyone has a different role. Everyone has a different place to play. Not everyone can do everything. We're so proud of our Red Cross colleagues and all that you do and stepping into the most challenging, difficult spaces. And you're there first when the event happens. And it's incumbent on many of us to support at different phases. And so this is about climate resilience. So I'm really happy and excited to be here as part of the discussion on water at the heart of climate action. It's a complex space. It requires many different partners who work with many different aspects of expertise and resources. It's a huge challenge. As I say, it takes a village. I think in this case, it takes a globe. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madame Yogita. To be honest, being at COP, time is always the most important resource. We have just 2 minutes, so we have to comb our hair according to the way the head has grown. It will dictate, unfortunately. So for now, I'm sure we would have got a lot of beautiful more messages. We have people like Mr. Henk Ovich here, who has been in the water space for a very long time. I talked about Martin here, who is a pioneer actually of this program, and many others here. So for now, I think I will invite Stefania, and then I will invite you, and then you will invite Peter Corpus to offer closing remarks. We have to shift around the program, but also to tell us, because we are supposed to have Sudan Met Institute sharing, but they were not here. You will also tell us what we're planning also for Sudan in this program as well. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. I'm so happy to be at the end of this event. The vibe in the room is so good. I've been in this water at the heart of climate action from day one, together with the colleagues at UNDRR and WMO. What we were hoping to have is something that would fill a space between early warning system and community resilience. Because early warning systems are extremely important to take people out of danger, but nobody wants to go back to a village without safe water. So you have to tackle the two things at the same time, which is complex. And you have to do it with the right people, with the right partnership. And you see it here. Governments, mandated institutions, Red Cross in their auxiliary role, ultimately communities. That is what we want to reach. So in this way, we can really take water at the heart of climate action, but not only talking about it, but actually doing it. We started this at the UN Water Summit in March. It was a dream. It was a dream of Henk. It was a dream of the Dutch government. It was a dream of many people. It has been fast-tracked to action. Because right now, we had fantastic speech, but they are all working. We started in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in South Sudan, the 1 year inception, the startup of this program. Why 1 year? Because I am not going to do it. Loretta is not going to do it. Shaban is not going to do it. It's Uganda, it's South Sudan, it's Ethiopia that is going to do it. They need to design it. Our colleague from Cameroon was saying you need to locally adapt it, which means you need to give the space and the time for them to come together with their partners, design, contextualize, address the challenges and the opportunities. So this is the space that now is starting. So they have 1 year of really intense talks, a conversation to set up a plan of action that will be initiated 1 year from now. And then they will have with us 4 years of implementation, but more, because this is a continuous work to put really water at the heart of this climate action to enhance the vulnerability of the community, to really enhance their resilience. And this is why we talk to donors. But when we talk to donors, we don't only ask money. We actually ask to co-create and co-design the financial instruments and the tools that they allow this type of dream to put water at the heart of climate action to sustain and to continue. So this is my call to action, not only to World Bank, but also to all the other owners that call us in, co-create and co-design these tools so that we can take these extra resources in the right way. We mentioned Sudan a couple of times. Potentially you are wondering. Hannah Rabban was supposed to be here, but of course you can imagine the difficulty of working in Sudan right now. So I take some of her words in saying that it is not okay to move out of difficult context. Sudan was on our list of countries before the conflict broke out. When the conflict broke out, we looked at each other and we said, we stay. We need to stay. We need to think. So our diversion of water at the heart of climate action there will be, of course, different. We will need to work with different actors, but we will stay and we will think together with them. We are designing with them what we call in the sector a conflict-resilient version of water at the heart of climate action, because there is no way of scaling up if we just avoid all the difficult conversation in the difficult context. So that's another thing that is going on. Now, I will be brief. Therefore, in March, at the UN Water Summit, you were being given a little hummingbird if you were part of a commitment to put water at the heart. The hummingbird was part of a fantastic story where the hummingbird was bringing in a tail, the hummingbird was bringing drops of water to actually shut off a forest fire. And the other animals were saying, why are you doing that? I'm doing my part. What are you doing? So this is our drop of water, water at heart. Around you, you see bags, you can see pins. I've given all of you pins. You find them there. The speakers are finding beside you. So now you are an hummingbird. So please take your pin and pin it to yourself to take water near your heart and really move water at the heart of climate action into existence and into motion. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for bringing us together. Now, who's in charge of this? Yes, Peter, to close it, from the Dutch government, the Senior Advisor for Policy and Climate.
Thank you, Stefania, and I'll be really brief because I know everyone's stretched and in for lunch. I just want to thank everyone and the distinguished panelists. I think this was a really rich conversation. As the Netherlands, we're really proud to support this initiative. I think we're coming in with a substantial amount of money, and we're really looking at this from a whole perspective. So not just, funding in the individual parts, but looking at the whole value chain, moving it into action. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and I want to wish you a very good lunch, and I hope to collaborate with you as we go forward. Thank you.